To Kill a Mockingbird, Part 2, Chapter 29. And Alexandra got up and reached for the mantelpiece. Mr. Tate rose, but she declined assistance. For once in his life, Atticus' instinctive courtesy failed him. He sat where he was. Somehow I could think of nothing but Mr. Bob Ewell saying he got Atticus if it took him the rest of his life. Mr. Ewell almost got him, and it was the last thing he did. "Are you sure?" Atticus said bleakly. "He is dead all right," said Mr. Tate. "He is good and dead. He will hurt these children again." "I didn't mean that." Atticus seemed to be talking in his sleep. His age was beginning to show. His one sign of inner turmoil. The strong line of his jaw mattered a little. One became aware of telltale creases forming under his ears. One noticed not his jet black hair but the gray patches growing at his temple. "Hadn't we better go to the living room?" Aunt Alexandra said at last. If you don't mind," said Mr. Tate. "I'd rather ask stay in here if it won't germ any. I want to have a look at his injuries, Wine Scout. Tell us about it." "Is it all right if I leave?" she asked. "I'm just one person too many in here. I'll be in my room if you want me, Atticus." And Alexandra went to the door. But she stopped and turned. "Atticus, I had a feeling about this tonight. This is my fault," she began. "I should have—" Mr. Tate held up his hand. "You go ahead, Miss Alexandra. I know it's been a shock to you, and don't you fret yourself about anything. Why, if we follow our feelings all the time, we'd be like cats chasing their tails. Miss Scott, see if you can tell us what happened. Why is still fresh in your mind? You think you can? Did you see him following you?" I went to Atticus and felt his arm go around me. I buried my hand in his lap. "We started home. I said, Jim, I forgot my shoes, so we started back for them. The lights went out. Jim said I could get them tomorrow." "Scout, raise up so Mr. Tate can hear you," Atticus said. I crawled into his lap. Then Jim said, "Hush a minute." I thought he was thinking. He's always want you to hush so he can think. Then he said he heard something. We thought it was Cecil Jacobs. He scared us once tonight, and we thought it was him again. He had on a sheet. They gave a quarter for the rat costume. I don't know who won it. Where were you when you thought it was Cecil?" "Just a little piece from the schoolhouse." I yelled something at him. "You yell? What?" "Cecil Jacob is a big fat hen, I think." We didn't hear nothing. Then Jam yelled hello or something loud enough to wake the dad. "Just a minute, Scout," said Mr. Tate. "Mr. Finch, did you hear them?" Atticus said he didn't. He had the radio on. Aunt Alexandra had hers going in her bedroom. He remembered began. She told him to turn his down a bit so she could hear hers. Atticus smiled. "I always play the radio too loud." "I wonder if the neighbors heard anything," said Mr. Tate. "I doubt it, Hack. Most of them listen to the radios or go to bed with the chickens. Molly Atkinson may have been up, but I doubt it." "Go ahead, Scott," Mr. Tate said. "Well, after Jam yelled, we walked on. Mr. Tate, I was shut up in my costume, but I could hear it myself then. Footsteps, I mean. They walk when we walk and stop when we stop. Jem said you could see me because Mrs. Crenshaw put some kind of shiny paint on my costume. I was a ham. How's that? Asked Mr. Tate, startled. Atticus described my role to Mr. Tate, plus the construction on my garment. You should have seen her when she came in, he said. It was crashed to the pulp. Mr. Tate rubbed his chin. I wonder why he had those marks on him. His sleeves were perforated with little holes. There were one or two little puncture marks on his arms to match the holes. Let me see that thing, if you will, sir. Atticus fetched the remains of my costume. Mr. Tate turned it over and bent it around to get an idea of its former shape. This thing probably saved her life, she said. Look. He pointed with a loud forefinger. A shiny clean light stood out on the dull wire. Bob Ewell's man business, Mr. Tate muttered. He was out of his mind, said Atticus. Don't like to contradict you. Mr. Finch wasn't crazy, mean as hell. Low down scant with enough liquor in him to make him brave enough to kill children. He never have met you face to face. Atticus shook his head. I can conceive of a man who... Mr. Finch, there's just some kind of man you have to shoot before you could say, how do you them? Even then, they ain't worth the bullet it takes to shoot them. Jules is one of them. Atticus said, I thought he got it all out of him the day he treated me. Even if he hadn't, I thought he came after me. He had gas enough to pastor a poor colored woman. He had gas enough to pastor Judge Taylor when he thought the house was empty. So, do you think he mad you to your face in daylight? Mr. Tate sighed. We better get on, Scott. You heard him behind you? Yes, sir. Well, we got under the tree. How you know you were under the tree? You couldn't see Tender out there. I was barefooted, and jumps on the ground always cooler under a tree. We'll have to make him a deputy. Go ahead. Then, all of a sudden, something grabbed me and mashed my costume. Think I dug on the ground harder, tussling under the tree, sort of. They were banging against the tracks, sounded like. Jem found me and started pulling me toward the road. Mr. Ewell yanked him down, I reckon. They tussled said more, and then there was this funny noise. Jem hollered. I stopped. That was Jem. Anyway, Jem hollered and I didn't hear him anymore, and the next thing Mr. Ewell was trying to squeeze me to death, I reckon. That somebody yanked Mr. Ewell down. Jem must have got up, I guess. That's all I know. And then Mr. Tate was looking at me sharply. Somebody was staggering round and panting and coughing fit to die. I thought it was Jem at first, but it didn't sound like him, so I went looking for Jem on the ground. I thought Atticus had come to help us and had got wore out. Who was it? Why, there he is, Mr. Tate. He can tell you his name. As I said it, I half pointed to the man in the corner, but brought my arm down quickly lest Atticus reprimand me for pointing. It was impolite to point. He was still leaning against the wall. He had been leaning against the wall when I came into the room, his arms folded across his chest. As I pointed, he brought his arms down and pressed the palms of his hands against the wall. There were white hands, sickly white hands that had never seen the sun. So white they stood out garishly against the dark-cream wall in the dim light of Jen's room. I looked from his hands to his sun-stained khaki pants. My eyes traveled up his thin frame of his torn denim shirt. His face was as white as his hand, but for the shadow over his jutting chin. His cheek waiting to hollowness. His mouth was white, there with shallow, almost delicate indentation at his temples, and his gray eyes were so colorless I thought he was blind. His hair was dead and thin, almost feathery on top of his head. Then when I pointed to him, his palm slipped slightly, leaving greasy sweat streak on the wall, and he woke his thumbs in his bed. A strange small spurs shook him, as if he heard fingernails scrape slate, but as I gazed at him in wonder, the tension slowly drained from his face. His lips parted from a timid smile, and our neighbor's image blurred with my sudden tears. "Hey, Boo," I said. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more, subscribe my channel, and then I can make more videos. Bye bye.